This is the Doubtless podcast, here to help you change from a state of doubt and insecurity towards a more calm, confident, and doubtless self. I'm your host, coach and psychologist Julian, and my guests are remarkable, ambitious humans who share their stories of doubtful moments, of their insecurities, and how that shaped their successes today. This episode was with Kristiaan Hilger. He is a scanner, as he calls himself, and also has the Scanner podcast. And what was interesting about his story or this podcast is, first of all, he has many different interests. So we had many topics to dive into and started actually with crypto. And further, after the topic of crypto, we got into a very deep part of his story of how he managed to get out of a corporate job. I didn't at first actually know that he was so high in the ladder, went up there and then completely shifted his life towards the digital nomad lifestyle. That's where we met. And one important book that he also shared many times was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. If you haven't read that, please go ahead and do that. It really helps to shift perspectives about money, about how things work. And I had a lot of fun interviewing him. He's a really fun and just light kind of person, and I really loved talking to him. But in the end, I also felt calm and chill, and we had some really deep insights. So enjoy the episode, and let's get started. I wanted to invite you was because we met on Nomad Cruise, the Digital Nomad Conference, and there you were just so fun to talk to. You had a presentation about, I think it was about video production and your testimonial business, I think.
Yes.
And
correct.
Awesome. And there you were just like such a open, fun person that I was just like, I want to have a conversation with this dude. No, I didn't know what you
Thank
were
very
doing,
much,
and I
Julian.
only knew like a little bit of video production thing, but it was already pretty clear that you were so fun to talk to, and that was like an opener for me to just, hey, let's hang out, let's have a talk. And then I think Caro had then also the great idea to ask you for a tripod. So then we had to come back, and I had to give it to you back, and had more little interactions. And then in the end, it was like, okay, for sure, I want to hang out, I want to connect with you.
Nice.
And then afterwards, I saw also like some of your LinkedIn and Instagram presence. And what that showed me was exactly what I noticed from your Scanner podcast. You just have like so many different areas that you go into and have like such a broad knowledge of so many different subjects. For example, what I found, I'm just going to go through some of those because I found it interesting. So you started with like going into supply chain. You were at DHL. You were, what did you say, associate manager. And you also went associate consultant at L'Oreal. You were a supply manager at ABB, a project manager. And then you went on your own journey a little bit for, I guess, self-employed with Invest Congress, with crypto, Macadamia Productions. You also went to the School of Business in Copenhagen. So it's like so many different layers, so many different things that I'm so curious to talk to you about. And some will definitely pop up. And I have very intriguing personal questions. I think these are the best that I want to start out with. So
Excellent. Looking forward.
yeah. So first of all, you mentioned before we started that you also want to talk maybe about crypto or Bitcoin or something like that. And honestly,
yes,
that
because
seems like
it's a current topic at the moment.
yeah, that seems like a topic you were like so excited about, and I watched a couple of videos from you about it, and you're just like so hyped when you start talking about it. And I want to bring my angle in there and ask you from the perspective of when you are it could be digital nomad, could be sort of employed but have some freedom or some money to invest. And how would you start with crypto or aka Bitcoin? So from the investment perspective, I'm not like super deep into all the crypto coins and all the different aspects, but I'm curious about the investment potential and what you think or see in there, because I think that's such a vast field, and probably as a scanner you're pretty good in there. So please just go ahead about the enthusiastic topic you have. I can't hear you right now. Your audio is gone.
You want
There you
right
go.
now with crypto? Should we share this?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Go
Can I
ahead.
share
Like
can I share
from
my
the
screen? Yeah, I
investment
cannot, right?
perspective. What?
I can't share my screen in Zencaster, right?
No, you can.
Okay, because otherwise I could show you some stuff, some from websites, charts. But okay, let's just go ahead. So should I just give you a brief overview of crypto for
Yeah, please go
somebody who
ahead.
has no idea about it?
Yes.
Okay, let me think how to make this concise. Okay, crypto is a really big field. Oh yeah, and one thing you forgot to mention that you don't know yet, but I am also a student now of blockchain and distributed ledger technology.
All right. Something I forgot to mention,
No,
which I didn't know yet. I
you
love
couldn't
it.
know because nobody knows. I haven't put it on my LinkedIn.
Okay.
I technically could put it there. So basically, I'm enrolled in a master program, a non-consecutive master program about blockchain and crypto since last year in
Nice.
September. But I'm a very bad student, so I attended one lecture so far. Uh, because I'm too busy like setting my own business at the moment that I don't have any time to study. But there's no like let's say limit how many years I can study in that program. So it's gonna be fun. And I attended one lecture. The professor was cool. I just said I didn't have any time. But technically I'm a student now as well, so I can tell you about my study program, right? But everything I know is technically from my own studies. So I came in contact with Bitcoin, I think for the first time. Somebody told me in college that, hey, Bitcoin is this digital currency and it's like numbers and everything is connected and on the blockchain. And I didn't have any idea what it was, but he said, anyway, at the moment, you can forget about it because it's now already $300. So it's way too late to invest. Anyway, at the time, I didn't have any money. I was this poor student. I mean, back then I was also studying, but there I was actually like really full-time studying. Now I'm just like part-time studying. And I have no money, and I didn't even know anything about investments. So I didn't invest, of course, but I should have, of course. And Michael Saylor is one of the biggest Bitcoin evangelists for MicroStrategy, and he always says everybody gets the Bitcoin at the price he or she deserves. Right. So if you knew about it very early on, to 2009 when it started, you would have now been a multi-billionaire if you had invested, whatever. I just mined Bitcoin yourself at the time, right? So I would have been much richer than I am. I'm not saying I'm rich, but if I had invested at the time this guy said it's too late, $300, yeah, you can imagine how much money that would be now today. Because today, now, as we're talking, Bitcoin is sitting at $67,600. So you can compare that to $300 when the guy told me about it, right? Not that I even would have had the $300 to invest, but anyway, it would have been a good investment. And then the next time I heard about Bitcoin was much later. It's like in 2017, I think, in a podcast by a guy called Markus Meurer. He was a very big inspiration for me because he was the first guy to launch a podcast about digital nomad lifestyle. Yeah, it's super cool. Yeah, and that's in that podcast. I would say it's probably similar to my own podcast because it's a combination of exploring the digital nomad lifestyle, but also other topics. So I would say it's like a scanner digital nomad lifestyle topic podcast. Very inspirational. And also, this podcast also inspired me to become a digital nomad, actually. Anyway, there was one episode with one guy in there, and he was called Diego, and he was also from Nomad Cruise. Really funny. So actually, those guys record an episode about Bitcoin or Nomad Cruise, whatever, 2, 3 or something, back in the day in 2017 or 16. So it's super interesting. So I heard about it, and in that year, 2017, Bitcoin was already like way above $1,000. I think it was like $2,000 or $3,000. Mm-hmm. And in that same year, Bitcoin went to 20,000 for the first time. So really crazy. I didn't invest until it was at 20,000, of course, because you're always thinking, hey, the price has to go down. And also, it was the first year when I was really dealing with investments. But you always wait for like lower entry points, but sometimes they don't come. Yeah, so it's really important if you want to invest that you have a position. It's called the dollar cost averaging. So basically, if you have about $1,000 to invest, put 300 now, because you don't know if the price at the moment is high or low, right? Okay, I can tell you it's relatively high for this year already, but nobody knows whether the price is going up or down, right? So you basically have an agnostic approach to investing. You invest, let's say, a third now, so let's say $330 now. Then you wait 2 months, then you invest another $330, and then after like a year, whatever, you invest another 330. So eventually, you will have a very good entry price, because you don't know whether now the price is high or low. But imagine now the price is super high, and now we're at a local, let's say, peak, and you invest $1,000 now, and then you wait like for 6 months, and everything's going down to 20,000. You should, shit, I should have waited until I invested 20,000 again. But nobody
Yeah.
knows, right? And so basically, in investing, trading, everybody always says, "Yeah, I know where it's going. I have this chart analysis, technical analysis, and I can tell you it will go up, it will go down." But the truth is, nobody knows. Really, nobody knows. There,
Mm.
of course, you might have a gut feeling. You might have certain evidence why you think a price might go somewhere. But in the end, it's supply and demand, right? So if there's more demand than supply, the price goes up. If there's more supply than demand, the price goes down. As simple as that. And that holds true for any kind of asset, like stocks, ETFs, gold, silver, Rolex watches, whatever, real estate,
Yeah.
mate, and whatever else, right? So it really depends. And that's the same with crypto. So at the moment, we have already above 19 million Bitcoin already created. In total,
Hmm.
there will only be 21 million. So the supply is very scarce, and it's even getting scarcer. So in April, so right about, I think, 5 weeks from now, we will have something called Bitcoin halving. That means the supply of new Bitcoins is cut in half. So we will only
Oh,
have
okay.
3.125 Bitcoin every 10 minutes being emitted. Right now, we are at 6.25.
Wow. Okay.
And that means basically that, yeah, it's getting less and less like available, right? So if, let's say, ceteris paribus, so if everything stays equal and the demand stays equal or even gets higher, there should be a higher demand for Bitcoin, and eventually over time the price will increase. But it's not financial advice. It's just my personal opinion. I personally believe it will go up over the next whatever 5 to 10 years.
Mm.
Yes, but your
But
question
it's
was,
it's
somebody wants to
it's
invest in
essentially
Bitcoin or
about,
crypto.
yeah,
Yeah,
no, but I think there's interesting because it's essentially if people believe there's some value and people want to buy it. If that is true and that holds true in the future, and we, I guess, all agree that Bitcoin, this imaginary product, is uh, has some value inherently, or not inherently, but we could just give it some value, then it will go up. So it's almost like a decision that needs to be done by the collective. Similar to, like,
yes,
I guess, gold in a way. I think there was sometimes the comparison between gold and Bitcoin. It is a scarce resource, so there's a limited amount of gold on the planet, and for some reason we have decided that this is a valuable asset. Some because of its characteristics, its properties, but essentially it's that is all. It's we could also have used stones, but we have plenty of those. So we just used gold because probably it's shiny, but also because it's a limited resource on this planet. And so I guess that's the comparison sometimes with Bitcoin in a way. But we do have to believe that it is valuable. Otherwise, the demand will not go up and the price will not go up.
correct.
Right? Okay.
So you mentioned gold, yeah. Bitcoin is often compared to as being digital gold, right? So basically, gold is obviously precious, but gold has technically no value.
Yeah.
Gold only has a value because people believe it has a value because of the history, because it's about 3,000, 5,000, 100,000,000 years old, and gold has always been like precious and hard to find, and is also like indestructible. You can't change gold into any other element. So it's definitely a very good store of value, right? So if you think, okay, something is scarce and I want to exchange that for something else, buy a bag of beans with a gold coin
Hmm.
or a Lamborghini, whatever, or back in the day, maybe some camels. Gold obviously has some value, but only because the history gives, basically puts that value onto that thing, right? Otherwise, gold has almost no use cases. I mean, of course, you can make jewelry out of it. You can have some, let's say, physical capabilities. For instance, you can put it into cables and stuff, right? Into some kind of wires and processors and stuff, motherboards. Yeah, but that's basically as PCBs. But so the application for industry is very, very limited. So technically, you can
Hmm.
eat gold, right? You cannot even like drink it or whatever. So if you're in a desert and you're, let's say, on a jeep safari somewhere, in Morocco, whatever, or in Saharan desert, and then suddenly your truck breaks down, your jeep breaks down, and you have your bar of gold. The other guy has like 2 gallons of water. I think it'll take you only like 1 or 2 days until you say, "Hey, guy, how about I give you my gold bar and you give me that water?" Right. So in the end, beauty or value lies in the eye of the beholder. And Bitcoin, very similar, right? You can't eat Bitcoin. No way you can do it. You can't do anything with it. Just like Bitcoin has a value because people believe it has value, and Bitcoin is in that way very similar to gold, right? Because Bitcoin only has a 67,000 now because people believe there's value in it, including me. And Bitcoin is in a much better gold, even much better store of value. Because let's say we don't live in a post-apocalyptic nuclear war scenario where everything breaks down and there's no computers anymore. Then of course Bitcoin will not be as accessible as gold. But even then, even if we lived in a nuclear post-apocalyptic scenario, there will be people that install mesh networks. So basically, they will even like operate their own internets or something to keep the blockchain alive. So this will all like probably happen if you ever come to that point in history. Anyway, let's say we still have access to Bitcoin in the future, in for 50 years from now, 100 years from
Hmm.
now.
Hmm.
Then Bitcoin's value will be significantly higher than it is today. That's my prediction. All right, but what differentiates Bitcoin from gold? Technically, it's both are very scarce. Bitcoin is even scarcer than gold because in Bitcoin you exactly know how many you have, how many there will be ever in existence, right? So until the year 2140, that's actually the year when it is expected to mine the very last block. So every block in the blockchain yields a certain amount of Bitcoin, and this amount is cut in half every 4 years, roundabout every 210,000 blocks. So, and in the year 2140, that's like when the very last fraction of Bitcoin, last Satoshi, will be mined. And until that time, there will always be a constant flow of supply of Bitcoin, but this will go down over time. And Bitcoin is also like divisible, right? So basically, one Bitcoin equals 100 million Satoshis. The founder of Bitcoin is called Satoshi Nakamoto. It's like an anonymous guy or a group or a girl, whoever, right? Some believe it's the CIA. Some believe it's some other secret organization. I believe it's probably a group of tech geeks that were like had a very, very crazy outlook and far sight about how the economy will work in the
Hmm.
future. And Bitcoin is the answer to many, many things that are going wrong in our society because
Mm.
Bitcoin combines 3 aspects. It's first of all, of course, the technical aspect, right? Blockchain is based on distributed ledger technology, so it's very technical. Then you have the monetary aspect, like something you can trade for money or other stuff. And you have the philosophical aspect. What is actually Bitcoin? Bitcoin is so you ask to make this brief. It's very difficult because Bitcoin is basically a culmination, a merge between all these 3 different fields. So
Mm.
monetary, technical, and philosophical, and that comes together into one asset, which is Bitcoin. And so Bitcoin is divisible, so I can take it with me, right? So if I go on a journey, I can technically store Bitcoin in my head. So if I have, let's say, 24 words or 12 words, I can write them down. This is my so-called mnemonic phrase or the seed
Mhm.
phrase. And with that phrase, you can basically restore your private key. And the private key holds your crypto technically. So nobody ever has had a physical Bitcoin in their hands, except for me, because
You have all the
run
stickers.
about run about 3.5 years ago, I was starting to print these stickers, right? And ever since I did that, the price of Bitcoin went up by whatever 600%. So must be very, very strong correlation between my stickers and the Bitcoin
Huge.
price increasing. But the question is it correlation or is it causation, right? So nobody knows. And
But
yes,
it's a very
Bitcoin
complex thing, right? For
is
now,
very
from
complex.
like
Yeah.
non-technical people, it sounds very complex, I think. But what is interesting about this is what you said just now already. It brings in a new twist on what maybe it might be wrong with society, or where we go as a collective, essentially. And so this might be like an idea, a direction of how to solve some of those. And so what I'm curious about now is that you're very interested into this topic. You learned a lot about it, and now I want to know how you changed your perspective on maybe society or the world or Bitcoin or a financial system before and after knowing about Bitcoin. Is there something that this idea, this thought, uh, changed in the way you see the world around you?
Very much.
Hmm.
Because I haven't even touched upon what's wrong with the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's wrong with the world? Isn't that a Black Eyed Peas song? I think how it starts.
Damn it, you got me there. I told you last time, music
Yes.
references. You put me on the
Yes, I love
spot
them.
here.
All right. So what's wrong with the world? If you just look back in time, right? Just like look back to COVID. What happened during COVID? I mean, I don't even want to discuss the virus or the pandemic, whatever. I just want to discuss the financial implications that the pandemic had. So basically, in November, so in March 2020, the world shut down, just like 4 years ago from now. And the response of the government, of the central banks, was to print more money, right? So if we can print more money, we can probably temporarily ease the situation, right? So there was a liquidity crunch in the system, and the businesses were running out of cash and so on. So they were basically printing more money. So what happens if you print more money? You eventually you deflate the value of that currency, right?
Yeah,
And
makes
this has
sense. There's
happened
more
not
supply
only
than demand. Get that now.
exactly
Yeah.
not only during COVID has this happened, but it has also happened way before. So if you look at the purchasing power of the US dollar or the euro, but US dollar actually is older, you see that it has decreased over the past 100 years. Like, don't quote me on this exactly, but I think it has decreased by 99% or even more of its value. So, but technically, let's say 100 years ago, for $1, you could probably, whatever, I guess, buy almost half a car or something. And now for $1, you cannot even buy a cheeseburger at McDonald's. And that's how you can see that the value of this currency goes down because of money printing. And during COVID, this has actually accelerated like heavily. So it was pretty intense to see. The thing is that people still believe that US dollar has value and euro and the Swiss franc, but in the end, they're all fiat currencies, right? So fiat means like you believe it should have value. It should have something as Latin. And technically, fiat currency has zero value. But let me show you something.
What you got? What are you bringing me? I'm curious.
Okay. Sorry, I had to go to the bank. I had to go to my off-market exchange. All right. So this stuff here is the Argentinian peso.
Yes, you're in Argentina right now, as a little side note.
Exactly. So I think this is around about 100,000 Argentinian pesos. And I asked,
100,000 Argentinian pesos. Okay, yeah.
every bill is 1,000 pesos. And it's actually 2,000. So the biggest bill is 2,000 pesos. All right. So basically, these 100,000 pesos are worth around about $100. But when you ask somebody, like I asked some locals here, what could you buy for this like 5 years ago, 10 years ago? I said, oh, yeah, that was a lot of money.
Hmm.
Right. But now, basically, this stuff here, this goes up in flames and is worth nothing. So technically, Argentina inflation is so high, we have an inflation of 210% every year.
210% every year.
Yes, absolutely crazy.
But isn't there like a change now happened with the president, that he like crazily changed the situation?
Yeah, Milei, he wants to cut government spending and wants to close a lot of government institutions and stuff. But apparently, he's also like saying one thing and doing another thing. That's what local just told me. So he's not really pulling through at the moment. Also, there's
Hmm.
a lot of like backlash from society. Like they elected him, but there's like demonstrations every week going on against him because he wants to decrease their government spending, right? So basically, some many people are suffering actually.
Hmm.
Apparently, 40% of the population are living, in poverty here. But this is what I want to tell you with this year, with fiat
Yeah.
money, is obviously that these 100,000 pesos used to be a lot more money, like I say, 10 years ago. And
Yeah.
inflation in Europe is also there, right? The euro, for instance, or the dollar was worth more like 10 years ago than it is today. You can buy more. You could buy more with the euro at the time. But we don't feel as much because inflation goes slower. But still, you can
Mhm.
feel it, right? Even if you
Yeah.
remember when in Europe they changed from the Deutsche Mark to euro, and all the currencies in Europe were changed, everybody felt like somehow the prices went up by 100% or something. Not true probably, but everybody felt I have less money in my pocket than I had before the euro
Yeah.
came, and that's why they also called it euro, also euro equals teuro, so something like the euro makes some stuff more expensive in Germany. And then there were like anti teuro parties, so basically parties where you could buy stuff for cheap prices.
I didn't know
Very, very
about
fun.
those. I feel like
Was that before your time?
no. I mean, I was already there, but it was how old? When was it? 2001, 2002? When was it? When was the
2002,
change?
the euro was introduced. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There was 6 years old, so I wasn't really considering that yet. It's important to me.
It was a very interesting time. Okay, but now let's say, put a long story short. So why is Bitcoin so different? Technically, because of one thing, it's the supply. Because here
Mm,
with the pesos, right, or with the US dollars or euros, the government, the central banks, they can print money into infinity, right, until whatever the supply has like doubled, tripled, 10x, 100x.
yeah.
Bitcoin is not possible because you in Bitcoin you only have 21 million. Everybody knows the protocol is always the same. It will most likely never change, and everybody knows about the rules.
Mm.
Bitcoin is very rule based. Actually, it's just like mathematics, and because it's a rule based, it's so secure and it is predictable, right? Because you exactly know how many Bitcoin will there be in a year from now, in 10 years from now. Of course, it'll always change a little bit how fast the blockchain works. Sometimes the blocks are being found quicker or slower, but overall, we know exactly how many blocks there will be, like that yield Bitcoin.
Yeah, but honestly, this part, I think for most people, including me, how
Hmm.
does that work? They don't find blocks that quickly. They're being mined. There's like a finite amount. How's that possible? Like all of those questions, not for you not to answer, but I think that is just like the dark
Oh, we
cloud
can answer
for
them.
a lot of people on how to like how this stuff even works.
Yeah,
And I think that's a big part because fiat money, you sort of, oh, I have here like a piece of paper and I can hand that over, and that's sort of the exchange. With Bitcoin,
correct.
you're like, yeah, I have like 0.00257 Bitcoin and exchange that
Yeah.
for something, right? It feels very, very strange. And where does the Bitcoin even come from? And so I think all of those questions seem very, very odd at first. But I think like now the part is interesting for me because okay, imagine somebody knows about that stuff that you do right now. That's why I'm asking you. How's that changing now? You spoke about the idea that okay, there's stuff wrong in the world that Bitcoin can solve. How's that impacting you and the way you perceive the world? How's that, changing the perception that you have maybe about money, about accumulating wealth, about, the way you go about your everyday life?
So, how do I go about it for my everyday life? Well, imagine you live in this country, this is Argentina, and you have this crazy inflation, right? So, what people want, they don't want this, they don't want the pesos anymore. So they
Hmm.
want like a safe haven. So for them, no, most of the time, the safe haven is the US dollar. So what they do is in the streets, they exchange pesos for dollars. And even like how much pesos you get for $100 has changed over the last year. Like a year ago was 300, now it's 1,200 or something. When I came in January, pretty sick. So how has Bitcoin changed my view on society? In many different ways, because you have first of all this aspect that obviously this is a scarce asset, much stronger. So people call it hard money, right? So gold is hard money, but in the end, nobody knows what pure gold there is, right? So Elon Musk might go to space and find an asteroid filled with gold and harvest that gold, and suddenly, boom, there's massive inflation in gold because supply went up by whatever 100,000%. I don't know, I have no idea, right? Bitcoin, we always know how much supply there will be ever. So Bitcoin is actually the harder gold. Like Bitcoin is the hardest money in the world, and by hard money, I mean it cannot be inflated. So opposite of what this is actually, right? This is just paper.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no value. Like even the value of this paper is probably by now more than the value of a peso. Okay, that's exaggerated. This is still like $1, 1,000 pesos. But still, even in Germany before the euro came, like the small coins, like Pfennig, right? So 100 Pfennig is 1 D-mark. The copper amount of the Pfennig was worth more than actually the amount of the money. So there were people
Damn,
actually
didn't know that even. Yeah.
taking the coins and melting them and making copper bar out of them and something like that. So it's pretty sick. It was not even pure copper; it was like messing. So it's like some mixture between two elements, I believe. But so funny that actually the value is higher than the actual face value of the coin. All right, and that's the same here for this paper stuff. And what I want to say is how it has changed my opinion. So my view on society and on monetary things and self-governing things. So basically, you can in Bitcoin and crypto, you have all the power, but also all the responsibility, and that makes it so interesting. So if you hold your own Bitcoin in your own wallet, that means that you have the full power, the full authority to do with this whatever you want. Right? So nobody can take that away from you. So your bank account can be confiscated by the government, right? Can be locked down, can be frozen. This can be stolen by somebody, of course, right? And with your credit cards, whatever, they can also be frozen. So in the end, the government, the central banks, the credit card companies, whoever, they can limit your spending behavior heavily, right? So if you have an asset like Bitcoin, which is basically apolitical, it's decentralized. That means the network of Bitcoin servers, right, is decentralized all over the world. And it's very, very, very hard for any government to stop this. I mean, they could technically do it. They or whoever wants to take the Bitcoin network, right? They could technically stop the Bitcoin network, but it would be very, very difficult. It's like comparable to, let's say, mushrooms, right? So you, whatever, if you want to eliminate mushrooms, you can probably do that in one forest. But as soon as you kill all the mushrooms there, like there will be somewhere a little seed and bam, it comes out again. So it's very difficult to kill Bitcoin. It's, I would say, almost impossible nowadays. So that's why I have so much trust in network. So I think that's very, very likely that in 10, 20, 100 years from now, we will still have this network. And so basically, I have with Bitcoin, I have the full control over my own monetary situation. And that's what's so amazing. But also, you have the full responsibility, because if you lose your private key, it's gone, right? So basically, if you lose a private key, basically your key to opening up your Bitcoin or your crypto for that matter, it all works the same. If you lose that private key, your coins are gone and there's no customer hotline you can call. And that's a problem. Because many people actually they don't know how to use it, how to be in a, let's say, operationally secure position to handle the private keys. Because it's definitely a challenge. It's not easy
Yeah.
if you don't know anything about it, but it gets easier and easier over time. But let's say at the moment, we are now in 2024. So Bitcoin started 15 years ago when it started. So exactly 15 years, 2 months ago it started. And we're still in its infancy right now. Because let's say this is like the Wild Wild West of the internet when it was in 1994 or maybe a bit later. It was still difficult to access like browsers and stuff, right? You had like Netscape Navigator or something, or I don't know. So it was more difficult. People were more like geeky who were actually dealing with the internet at the time. And Bitcoin now it's the same. Now it gets more and more mainstream. Like obviously when the price goes up heavily, people are interested in it. They want to buy it. And then unfortunately, the price goes down again because it was like a bubble, whatever. But it was, of course, these bubbles necessary to raise the awareness of what it is, right? So you also have these cycles. And in crypto, it can happen very quickly. Just like look now, and in February, Bitcoin went up from $40,000 to $60,000, and now we're at 67. So we're almost at the all-time high now. The all-time high is at 69,000, so we are way from that, I think, by $500 or something. So, yeah, exciting times.
Damn.
So I hope I answered your question. Why I like it so much? It's
Yeah.
technically the future. Even like if you look into generations, right? You're Gen Z, I guess.
I think it's on the border. Like 1996 is like on the border between.
Okay, so you're
Millennial,
very
Gen X.
young Generation Y like me.
Yeah.
So, so technically, the generations after us to come, the Gen Z and onwards, I think what's next one's Generation Alpha, probably, right? So they are more tech savvy even than we are, right? So they grew up with
Yeah.
TikTok, Instagram in their cell phone, YouTube, all these apps,
In their
whatever.
crib.
They don't even know what used to be like having a physical photo, right? The baby goes on the phone and wants to do this to enlarge the newspaper picture, right? So babies don't even know what difference between like an iPhone and a newspaper or a magazine. So technically, that's like the generation that grows up, and you can imagine when they become of age and they get money and they are starting to work. I don't think they will invest in necessarily in stocks or real estate. They will actually buy Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies.
Mm,
Because this is the new asset. It's so young. It's now 15 years old, right? So it's very, very,
yeah.
very young compared to anything else there is. So stocks, ETFs, real estate, gold, silver. Yeah. So
That's actually an
right.
interesting
Yeah.
perspective. Like, also part of the podcast is right to change perspectives, and
Yeah.
now mine. What happened now when you describe that is actually now, yeah, our perception is maybe that maybe real estate is a pretty solid thing. People always need that. Maybe food, but also now the generations to come are very, very equipped and very knowledgeable about technology. So
Exactly.
maybe for them, the go-to thing is, as you said, oh, maybe I'll invest in Bitcoin because that's a way stronger source than gold or whatever. So the rate of change that's happening right now is so crazy that's really hard to comprehend in our minds. I think a lot of people compare also
Exactly.
now the AI change. It's going exponential. So the last 1.5 years since OpenAI launched ChatGPT is just we can finally see the exponential change and curve a little bit clearer, but it's so hard for our minds to comprehend. And I think that is probably gonna bite us in the butt in the future because we don't understand actually how fast things are moving. And so
True that. Yes.
I'll keep that in mind what you just said, because the future generations will have higher demand probably of crypto or some sort of online currencies. And so thanks for the shift. Um,
It is a
I,
shift. And
yeah,
just yesterday, because you told me about this is going to be about the why, right?
yep,
So I rewatched a very good TED talk by Simon Sinek,
mm,
Start with the Why. And
yeah,
actually,
it's
in
great.
that TED talk, he always talks about these adaption curves. Very, very interesting, and you've probably seen it as well, right? So you have like whatever, like the very early first movers, right? And then you have like
Hmm.
the guys who were like coming a little bit later, and then like the big majority, and then you have the laggards who just like they shift to new technology because they have to, because no other availability anymore.
Hmm.
For instance, I guess with, let's say, cell phones and then landlines, right? Very, very good example.
Yeah.
Right now, like cell phones are so commonplace, but back in the day, like 1990 or something, nobody had a cell phone,
If you
right?
want to now go in a restaurant to order something, you almost have to have a cell phone in order
Yes,
to view the menu.
exactly. And the
Yeah.
same with this adoption curve for crypto. So people always like they argue where we are in the adoption curve, but I would say that now we are probably turning a bit more into like this mainstream area, but
Hmm.
still it's very small compared
Yep.
to all the other money. Let's say if you compare, let's say you make like circles or something, right? Like how big the different asset classes are in the world.
Hmm.
If you compare them to each other, right? So the majority of money actually lies in real estate, big, big, big chunk,
Okay.
right? All the real estate in the world is like this much, and then you have whatever gold and silver, you have all the stocks, and so, and then you have a tiny, 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 tiny fraction, which might be even smaller than this cap of the thing, right? It's Bitcoin. So
Hmm.
compared to all the other money in the world, Bitcoin and crypto are very, very, very small. Like right now, we're sitting at a market capitalization of, I can't even see it here on the website, but let me open it up. So if anybody wants to research cryptocurrencies, the go-to place is coinmarketcap.com, and they show you all the cryptocurrencies. So right now we have 2.5 trillion dollars, and we are currently at $68,783. That means that we are just $200 away from reaching the all-time high.
Oh,
And
dang.
that what was it? 2.8 trillion dollars, right? Sounds like a lot. 2.5 trillion dollars sounds like a lot, but in the end, it's not very much. It's compared to all the other things, it's negligible.
Mm.
All right, so Bitcoin crypto has a definitely big growing potential. You
Okay.
look at Apple, right? Apple's market capitalization is even bigger than Bitcoin's.
Yeah, that's nuts. It's so hard to comprehend that a single company has so much value.
Capitalization. Let's see where we're currently at. So, yeah, okay, Apple has $2.6 billion, and all of
Mm.
crypto has at the moment 2.5 trillion. So you can see that even one company only, even has more capitalization in a market than the entire crypto space. So that shows you, Apple, of course, Apple is very big, right? But
Yeah.
there's so many other companies and so many other things to invest in the world. So you can see like that we are still early. Still, still early, still pretty early.
Yeah. And I have the feeling you like to like jump into those topics and just like go head over toes and just like jump in and learn about stuff. And but it like made me kind of I was very surprised when I looked at your profile and saw you worked in corporate, and like you
Yes.
were associate consultant, you were project manager, you were a supply chain manager, and I'm like, what the heck, Christian? What? I didn't like honestly, I couldn't have seen you doing those things. Um, so a burning question that I had when seeing that, I was like, wait, first of all, how did you and how was it in working in there? But also, what's the transition, especially the transition? I'm curious about from this corporate environment to self-employed. What was going through your mind? How was that?
Yeah, actually, that was one step in between. I think it's also on my LinkedIn. It's like I was at a startup in between
Hmm.
called Grape, and I was there for roughly 2 years. Yeah, that was like the stepping stone into my, say, self-employed
Hmm.
entrepreneurial stage.
Yeah.
So what were the steps? You asked me like how I got from corporate to where I'm now.
Yes, and, like I think mostly, but when did you notice that this corporate environment was sort of off or not fitting, and then the step going out of there, and what was the thinking process? And
Yeah, yeah, I can tell you my story. It will take me some minutes if you, but we have some
sure,
time, right?
I don't have anything planned after this. Oh wait, no,
Okay,
later
cool.
in like 2 hours I have something. But
Okay,
go
cool.
ahead.
Okay, so this is gonna be really like a Joe Rogan podcast, huh?
Yeah, maybe not like full on 3 hours, but let's have a bit of time, have a
Okay,
bit
so
of
I have
space.
another interview at 2 o'clock.
Oh, nice.
In person though. Yeah, so let me begin at the beginning.
Go
So
ahead.
technically, where I come from is I grew up in a family with, I would say we were a middle class family in Germany. Actually, I was born in Netherlands technically. So my father's German, my mother's Dutch, and we moved to Germany when I was around 5 6 years old. And my father was a teacher. My uncle actually is a priest, has a PhD in theology. So in my family, like academic value was always like academic performance was always very valued very highly. Yeah. So of course I had probably got ADHD. I guess I still have probably ADHD. Was never diagnosed though. My brother has it. And growing up, I had a teacher who was very strict with me in elementary school. And she probably channeled my energy somehow, my skills, performance into the right direction, and in terms of like being a high achiever in school, right? Knowing how to study all the books, knowing how to learn everything by heart, and really bring that performance like onto the road. And so I was really good at school. I was actually the best student in elementary school, and then I went on to the secondary school, gymnasium. It's also really good there. And then I finished that school with like top grades. Actually, I was the best guy, but not the best girl. There were like two girls that beat me. But I had a pretty good, like almost like an A in my A level certificate, Abitur in Germany. And then I went on to study. So I already knew I had so many different interests, right? But I didn't know what to do with my life. So of course, what did I do? I studied economics because of business. Because with that, you don't limit yourself, right? You can do anything. And the school is kind of cool. Schools like Scanner, like for scanners, is excellent because you can look into biology, chemistry, physics, music, sports, German, math, whatever English you want to learn. But then after college, after school, you have to select a topic. And for me, it was very tough to do that. So I knew like business, okay, sounds somewhat interesting, but not sure if it's going to be the most interesting thing that I ever wanted to do. Anyway, I did it, and then of course I went onto a private business school because I thought, okay, I'm gonna have the best education that gives me the best starting point to having an amazing career in corporate or somewhere else,
Hmm.
being consultant or being an investment banker. That was like the big goal, right? I either become a consultant at McKinsey or become an investment banker at Goldman Sachs, something like that. Yeah.
That was
So it's
your
even
idea as well.
yeah. I think I didn't want to be a banker, but I always thought, yeah, being a consultant would be really cool. And yeah,
it's
because you
it's
wanted to
interesting how
actually have the
those
skills.
ideas and dreams like lay out a path and we look like 30 years ahead, and this seems to be this seems to be the path, and then we align our
Yeah.
life towards that. For me, it was actually a mechanical engineer. I was on the road being a mechanical engineer. I was studying in high school still chemistry and mathematics, and then flipped completely to psychology, and
Yeah.
then
It's
a
funny.
completely new world opened up as soon as you change this like path of going. And it looked like the direction of, I'm just gonna study for the next like 6 years mechanical engineering, then gonna get a job at one of the big car manufacturers in Germany, and then that gonna do that for the rest of my life. Like that was literally my perception of how my life could look like. Obviously,
Yeah.
completely shifted,
Yeah.
but
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So
And
you
that's a cool thing,
had some
right?
of those
So
ideas
our
as
head,
well.
first of all, our head is round, so the thoughts can change direction.
Oh, interesting.
That's a cool thing, right? And
Yeah.
applies very much to my personal story, because in the end, I would say I would like I had like a red thread in my CV until a very certain point, and that is so technically after college, right? So I went on to not becoming a consultant, not becoming an investment banker, but I actually went into corporate, and I was in a trainee program. It was a very nice program. It's in Switzerland, a company called ABB. It's like a big competitor of Siemens or General Electric. They had at the time 120,000 employees, big like conglomerate, electrical engineering stuff. And I was in a training program for supply chain management. So that actually was my specialization in college. I studied supply chain
Hmm.
management. Actually, my master was 100% supply chain management. All right. So what did I do? I was part of the program. So we were handpicked from, I think, over 1,000 people to be placed in that program. And it was pretty cool. So you met the CEO, and the CEO would tell you, yeah, you're going to be the future manager of this company. You're going to rock this place, blah, blah. So really putting all these thoughts in your head, okay, really, I'm going to be a big shot here, right? So I'm going to earn a lot of money. Maybe that was always my motivation, I think, from early on. Maybe I want to have more money than my parents. I don't know. So that's why I want to go to this private business school, get the best education, and in the end, get a very good job. In the end, I got a really good job. It was a nice salary. The program lasted 2 years. So I was 1 year in Switzerland, then half year in India. Great time. Had my own driver, had my own apartment, all the whatever benefits. So I got food for money and whatnot. So I don't know, like it was a very easy life. And then afterwards, I went to the US, got my $3,500 apartment paid for, had a car, got food allowances. It was an easy life for
No
sure.
way.
Yeah, yeah,
Honestly, I
yeah.
had not seen that coming.
Yeah.
I met you as this like funky dude. I'm doing video production, a bit of here, a bit of there, and then you
Yeah,
tell
but
me about that corporate
have you
story.
seen
Okay.
the old image of me? I was wearing a suit and a tie. I didn't look like this. Didn't have this crazy hair. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're watching the
I
video, he looks like a funky guy and nothing like a corporate guy, just like getting paid everything and being in and what board meetings or something.
yeah, I really met the CEO of this company. I was really working with management of this company, and so eventually it dawned on me that so there were two things happening in parallel. So first of all, I was in India in 2016, and there was a younger guy, probably around your age or maybe a bit older than you, and he told me, "Hey, actually, you should." He was an intern at some other company, and he said, "Hey, you should read this book called Reichheitsgeistens, like a German book written by a guy called Alexander Fischer. He's like a real estate guru in Germany, in Düsseldorf and the area." And he said, "But before you read that book, read the other book called Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki." And anybody who doesn't know what the book is basically telling you how to earn money in life and how to make choices about how to live technically, right?
Mm.
Because we all have choices just for everybody that doesn't know the books, basically you have 4 different areas. Either you are employed, so you get a salary, get a paycheck every month. You're self-employed, so you're the system, right? So you have to provide value to make money. Or you're a business owner, so you build a system or a business that generates money for you. Let's say you're McDonald's and you have a franchise system, and all these franchise takees, they generate money for you eventually, right? And number 4 is your investor. So you invest in something and you hope the value goes up, and by that you make money. So basically you have 4 different ways to make money in life. And that blew my mind. So in India, I started listening to the book. I listened to the very first 2 hours, but it was boring. India was much more exciting. Going out, exploring the country, going to party, meeting Indian girls, whatever. But I did not have any interest in studying that book because I found it was boring. So then later on, I somehow came across a podcast. I don't know, some German guy interviewing other entrepreneurs. And then in the end, he always asked the guys, he said like, okay, so what books inspired you? And then this one guy said, yeah, of course, the classic Richard Poor. I say, so wait a minute, you know that book actually. And that's actually when I continued to read it. So I was reading the book in December 2016. So right now already quite a long time ago now. But that was probably like the pivot, the shifting point, the turning
Okay.
point in my whole mindset and career. Because I listened to that
Yeah,
podcast
what happened?
so I listened to that podcast, and it was about entrepreneurs. But it was like because some motivational speaker that I knew in Germany, like Christian Bischoff, like the German Tony Robbins, and he was being interviewed there. And then I thought, okay, this podcast about entrepreneurs doesn't really apply to me because you're an employee, right? So why would you listen to this stuff? And then after like the second or third episode, I thought actually it's pretty interesting, right? So he was interviewing like people who Germans, whatever, who got like were in the UK, and they found out about smoothies, and they said like, hey, why can't we like sell smoothies in Germany? And then they went to some kind of whatever beverage company, and they were like asking them, hey, can you produce smoothies for us? And they said, yeah, actually, with the quantity that you want to produce, at the end of the machine of the tube, nothing comes out, right? So you have to increase your production quantity by 100 times something. But then eventually, right? So they continued, and then they found like a smaller bottling company, and then they could actually produce the smoothies. And it was very inspirational, actually. Like after the third or second episode, I thought, okay, these guys are actually just like me, right? They're entrepreneurs. They have entrepreneurial mindset somehow, and I like listening to this stuff. And if they can make money with smoothies, I can then do the same.
So you created a smoothie company.
I did not
What?
create a smoothie company, but still, I make kombucha myself. So right now, as I speak, I have 18 liters of kombucha in the making at my place here in Buenos Aires.
No way. That's why you dropped the topic in the beginning. I was like, oh, he drinks it.
Yeah,
He likes to drink it. It makes sense.
I even made it on the cruise. I make kombucha on the Nomad Cruise.
Oh, I didn't notice. I didn't see that.
So, what I want to tell you, yes, the story continued. So then I went on to read the book, Richard Purdett, and then I was on a business trip from St. Louis to Jefferson City, and we were supposed to negotiate like a big contract about aluminum stuff for the country and the whole region. And on that road trip, we went by my car for like 2 hours maybe. I listened to that book, Richard Purdett, and listened to the end of the book. And this book is absolutely mind blowing. And if you haven't dealt with any other like literature in, let's say, financial education, this is the book to start with. And I listened to this book, and it absolutely blew my mind. And then in that very moment, I was in the car, and I arrived at the location where negotiation was taking place. And then it dawned on me that, okay, this is going to be how my life's going to look like, right? So I will not be employed anymore in a corporate job. I will do my own thing. I will become an entrepreneur. I will become an investor. And I will live my life freely and self-determined. And that was the vision that I had in 2016,
Wow.
December.
That book was powerful for you.
Very powerful.
I remember it reading as well. I was still living in my parents' place, and I was like, I am gonna be rich. Like, there's no way
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna be able to determine my direction in life or the way I want to live. So it actually had a really really big impact too for me. And
Nice.
that, like, the thought for you was like you were in a corporate job, you had a high salary, things were going
Yes.
actually really well for you, but things flipped then as soon as you read the book that you didn't want to have. You wanted to give up all that um, awesome status maybe that you had in the big corporate job, all the money that you earned there already, and do what?
Yes, yeah, it was a progress, right? So or process, look at it. So no, I didn't change from one other moment, but because of that book, I started looking into much more stuff, like other books, for instance, the Nomads, right? They love this book by Tim Ferriss, The 4 Hour Work Week. Also,
Hmm.
amazing book, like how you can, let's say, leverage geo arbitrage, how you can leverage different time zones. To for instance, Tim Ferriss lived in Thailand while he was managing his business in the US, and so on. And he told people, okay, only send me emails twice a day, so I can work in between and so on. So anyway, this is also a really amazing book. And then I read a lot more stuff. Also the German book that I mentioned, so Reich als die Geissens, really amazing book for any German speaker here. And yeah, then I started. I think I started trying to trade. That was the first thing that I did in 2017. So I started
Hmm.
an account with like a company, put some money in there, started trading. It felt horribly, of course, because trading is really difficult, right? If you don't know what you're doing, don't do trading. It's very stressful, and most likely you will lose money, like me in the
Okay.
beginning. All right. So what happened then? So technically, this was like the setting. So the initiating spark was like December 2016, and my stint in the US was coming to an end in March 2017. And then the idea was that after that, I would shift into another role in Switzerland, back where I started, right, my mother company, so to say, and to get some kind of managerial position because you went to this 2-year program and you have so much about the company now, and your skills have of course skyrocketed, and you can do a lot of value and can have a lot of impact in the company. Unfortunately, the thing is, I was part of a restructuring program. Actually, when I was in Switzerland, we worked together with McKinsey on
Hmm.
restructuring the company, and part of that restructuring was also like to cut high cost countries. That means like to reduce the amount of jobs in Switzerland and other high cost countries. So the supply chain manager lady who was like in charge of our trainees, she said like, yeah, you have an amazing profile, but unfortunately, we can give you a job in Switzerland because we're cutting jobs in the moment, right? So what you can do is you can either go to India or to Poland and work for local salary in a service center. And that was the
Wow.
very service center where I was working in India, right? And I knew that I don't want to work there for local salary. That's absolute nonsense. Because if I learned one thing from Richard Purdett already, if you're employed, you should always maximize your hourly rate. So you should always see that you can employ your skills at the highest amount possible. And that's like not working for $5 an hour in Poland, but rather like for 50 or $100 in Switzerland, for instance, right? Or even higher. So in the end, this didn't fly with me because my mother said, yeah, but it's in Poland also cheaper and the money will be enough to live there. Blah, blah, blah. Might all be true, but in the end, we all trade time for money. And I can, as a capitalist that I am, I can optimize my value. And that's by going somewhere where you basically are rewarded higher for your work. And I definitely knew I don't want to work in Poland or India unless I'm an expat. Because being an expat means you get your local salary. So I get a Swiss salary in India and the
Hmm.
US, while getting an allowance. So technically, I wasn't even spending much money from my
Yeah.
salary.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. And what I want to say is, so technically, I was about to quit my job, but I think like 2 weeks before my contract ended, or 3 weeks before my contract ended, somebody called me from HR and from some of the Swiss branches in Zurich, and they said, "Yeah, Mr. Hilger, we have a job for you here. You can actually come and blah blah." And so of course I had an interview. Yeah, so like a strategic supply chain manager position for this factory, and it's all going to be nice. Blah blah blah. Supply negotiation, strategic work, and so on. All right, so then actually I accepted the role. I came
Okay.
there April 1st, wasn't a joke. And actually, also I started in the company 2 years before on April 1st, but it's never been a joke. It's always the truth. And I think it's the truth, but we might live in the matrix, right? So not really sure.
What
Anyway,
is the
so
truth?
what is the truth? Yeah, what's the truth? Yeah, there was actually a lecture in my college on
Nice.
ethics, like what is truth? You can define truth in many different ways, actually.
Damn
All
it, you
right.
intrigued me.
The Matrix has you, Julian.
Uh,
All right. So what happened then? So yeah, I started working that job, and the job was technically like overseeing a factory. So I had to make sure that the supply for this factory that was producing like generated circuit breakers. So basically, let's say very, very big switches,
Mm-hmm.
like a light switch for a power plant. Technically, let's say when you have the generator, and then you have the GCB, the generated circuit breaker, and then you have the grid. And the GCB that we produce looked like big washing machines, like 3 washing machines next to each other. But you're an engineer, right? So you 3 different phases. And I was like,
I'm
this is
not. I
like,
didn't study it.
I did not. Ah,
No,
sorry,
I
sorry,
did
sorry.
not.
I
I
thought you
stopped
did.
before I started.
Okay, I got it. You pivoted even before. All right. So anyway, so basically, it's like looks like really big washing machines that fit into a truck technically, and those were producing for power plants. Anyway, it doesn't matter what the product was. I was mainly responsible. I was the single point of contact actually for any kind of questions they had. So whenever like something was missing in the production, they were coming to my desk and so on. And you already see like that's where the error lies, right? So they told me before there's going to be a strategic role, and in the end, it was very, very operational. So it was
Mm.
nothing that I was trained for, nothing I've ever seen like in my studies, nor my internships, nor during the whole training program. So basically, it was like a bait and switch. So basically, they told me it's going to be a strategic position that's like relevant to my skills, and it was not. So technically, my predecessor, I asked him after like 2 3 months. I went with him to like a meeting room and said, "Hey, can you tell me, like, Mike, what's going on here?" Right? So this job is kind of crazy, right? Because everybody's coming to your desk with issues, and everybody wants you to solve the stuff and save the world. And then he told me, "Yeah, you know, Kristiaan, if you hadn't come and take over my role, I would have quit." So that was a very nice catch, I think, and it's a very nice twist. Not so nice actually, right? But technically, he told me that this job is like a horror position, and it was a horror position. It was like technically, I would say after 4 months being in that job, so basically like say July, August 2017, I was
Mm-hmm.
probably on the brink of a burnout,
Mm.
and I was basically dreaming about stuff at work at night, stuff like I kept on even after the work finished in the night 6 7. I was driving home, cycling home with my bike, and I kept thinking, how can I solve these issues at work? And I couldn't, right? Because sometimes these lie out of your area of power. Because the supplier, for instance, has to deliver a certain part, right? If the supplier can't deliver this mouse, for instance, whatever, some part you need for production, you're screwed, and you cannot even do much. You can, of course, try to work with the supplier to speed up the process. But there were so many cases in my time there where suddenly an issue came up, like a bomb exploded. You didn't even see it coming, and then suddenly it's okay. Now the production says we need this part in 2 weeks, and the supplier says I need 16 weeks for this. And then you can try to
Mm.
save the world, right? Because you can never have a standstill in the production line. That's like the main thing you should avoid. And the responsibility was on my shoulders. So like a young guy who started there, whatever, I was like 27 or something, 28, I don't know. And they put the responsibility on me. So it was a lot of responsibility for that factory. And it was actually eating me up from the inside. So I was really like isolating myself. Of course, I had friends, but in the end, I just wanted to isolate myself. And I came home, watched Netflix all night long, ate crap food, and the next day I went back to that job. And I got up.
Mm.
It got so bad that I got up in the morning, and I knew, okay, this day is going to be either okay, or it's going to be like shitty, or it's going to be catastrophically shitty, fucked up beyond recognition shitty. And you don't even know like in advance how the day is going to be, because these problems, they just arise like some other colleague or some system, whatever, wasn't monitored, and that's why a big issue now arises, because this issue was lingering in the back, but suddenly it comes to the surface
Mm-hmm.
when somebody says, hey, this thing is missing, and suddenly bam, you don't know about it. Yeah, it was a really fucked up job, because also they merged 3 departments into one department, like the year before, and also many people had quit before me, right? And I just came there, and they sold it to me like as the most amazing job or something, right?
Of
So in the end, it was
course.
a bit switch situation. So I talked to my boss. My boss actually was always a very cool guy. Also is now himself entrepreneur, has his own company now, left the company. But the problem was the setup, right? So they merged 3 divisions into one, and then they thought, okay, this guy's still gonna fly. And I was basically on the brink of a burnout. Probably wasn't a burnout. I never went to a doctor, but I definitely know that I was depressed. I was dreaming about the stuff at work. I was isolating myself. and I felt really bad.
For
Yeah.
how long did that go on?
Technically, I started in April 2017,
Hmm.
and the first time I spoke to my boss was in August. So technically, like 4 months later. But then I had a talk with him, and he told me to write me an email. So I wrote a 3-page email to him, and then I had a meeting with him and his boss, our department head. And this guy, the department head, he had like responsibility for around I think 100 people, so in our department. And he said, yeah, if you want to have a career, you just have to go through this shit, just like hang in there.
Mm.
And Kristiaan, one day you're going to be our best purchaser, you're our best supply chain manager, and like all the things you've learned now in the past 5 months. You don't know the machine inside out, and you know all the parts about it, all the suppliers, blah blah blah. And like in 1-2 years, we're going to make you the best supply chain manager in this company. And that's basically like holding like this carrot in front of your nose, right? So you know what I
Totally.
mean. And they want to promise you that everything's going to get better and so on. And if you just like stick around a little bit longer, you get that promotion and so on. So in the end, of course, I could have done that with my old mindset. Like going way back like 20 minutes ago where we started talking about this topic. So I always achieved everything that I wanted to, right? So in high school, I was always one of the best. In college, I was always performing well and so on, internships. So I always got everything I wanted, and I always achieved everything that I wanted, and I delivered the performance that I wanted to deliver. And this was the first time in my life where I basically had to admit I can't do it. Like I didn't know what to do. And I even that email to my boss, because my boss was a very cool guy. He said, "Hey, you're the first one in the team to really point this out, that something's going wrong here. But please send me an email." And then I wrote him a 3-page email with a lot of um, like examples and like
Yeah.
comparisons of how and analogies of how I felt. For instance, let's say you're in the garden and you have this sprinkler thingy, right? It's called a sprinkler that sprays
I think
water.
so, yeah. But it
Nice
goes
one.
from one side to the other, not
Yes.
around.
So
Yeah.
this thing has like 30 or 40 holes, right? Where water comes out.
Hmm.
Okay. And I imagine that somebody giving you a task. Okay, now you have 10 fingers. Now you have to cover every hole and make sure no water comes out. So I covered the 10 holes, but then still 30 holes, water comes out everywhere. And that's exactly how I felt. Because technically
Mm.
you can fix one problem, but then in the same moment, bam, another one comes up. And you don't even see it coming, right? Like the car that hits
Yeah.
you when you cross the road, you don't see it coming. And that's how I felt. And basically I realized, okay, I know that I have a lot of skills. I know that I can deliver performance, but anyone in this wrong environment, nobody can deliver the performance in this environment. So it was like in Germany, we say like fighting against windmills, right? So the windmill is like blowing, 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 and you'd want to move forward, but you cannot because the windmill is like pushing you back all the time. And that's how I felt. Like I could
Mm.
never get up like on top of it. And that's actually so in the same year, because of all those like the book that I read, and also my best friend at the time, he also wanted to change into like a more entrepreneurial career, and so we both decided, okay, let's do Amazon FBA. Actually, it was his idea, so like an e-commerce setup.
Hmm.
And then we both like decided, okay, let's go to Bulgaria and start a company there, and let's do Amazon
Wait,
FBA.
wait, where are we digital nomad? Or
No,
why
no,
did you
no, no,
decide I'm gonna go
no,
to
because
Bulgaria and start an FBA business? Because it just sounds a
no,
bit
the
out of
reason
nowhere.
the reason was because I was in Switzerland. This is still my residence today,
Ah,
and
okay.
the thing is, you want to sell in the German market on Amazon, and for that you need a company in Europe, in the European Union, to import goods and services. So we want to buy stuff in China, like have stuff manufactured and send over to Europe. Let's, for instance, say these sunglasses, something.
Hmm.
And yeah, so the thing is, we need a company in Europe, so and that's why we investigated a little bit what possibilities do we have. And Bulgaria came out as one solution because the taxation is pretty good,
Mm.
and also it's within the European Union. So we decided, let's go with Bulgaria. We started the company. We flew over to Sofia, and the company was up and running. And then how will we continue? So the company was founded, I think, September, October 2017. But it still, at the time, it was very difficult to put any effort or work into this new thing, because the corporate job was taking so much energy away from me. So like, imagine like I was at work and I felt horrible the whole day, and then you come home and you're completely exhausted, and then you have no power anymore
Yeah.
to sit down at 8 o'clock at night and then like work on your business, right? So I had all the ideas. I really tried to build something there, but in the end, I realized it wasn't wasn't meant to be. Not in this setup at least. All right. So anyway, so I was in November of that same year. I think like it was 3 months after I talked to my boss and his boss about how fucked up things were. Sorry, the conversation with my boss and his boss ended like this. So he said, "Yeah, you have to go through this stuff, through this shit, if you want to have a career." And I said, "Okay," with my new mindset from the book, right?
Yeah.
Which I put it. I said, "Okay, we all trade time for money, and I can trade my time somewhere else much better in another job and earn the same money or more money than here." And so
That's what you said to your boss
I told it to my boss. Yeah.
without any proof, really.
Yeah, no, I think I framed it like this. What did I say? Yeah, definitely told him we all trade time for money,
Hmm.
and I can trade my time another job much better. I want to tell them, if you want to keep me, give me a strategic role because I was an operational hell. It was like operational nightmare. So I told him, give me a strategic role that I'm trained for. I'm the guy who makes the best PowerPoint slides. And can put Excel spreadsheets together to whatever to forecast you whatever you want to do in your business or to plan everything you want, but on a high level and not like on this nitty gritty operational stuff that I'm not made for. And like, you have operational buyers for that, right? But operational buyers, they would also come to my desk because I was the so-called unit buyer. So they were technically referring to me as a single point of contact for everything. So if the operational buyer was actually in charge of like talking to the suppliers, doesn't get any further, he comes to me and says, "Okay, I can't do anything. This is now your topic, your problem." So they were
Hmm.
just dropping everything onto me. Yeah, and so then how did everything continue? Yeah, so after that talk, 3 months later, again, like in November, I was at a point where things were really bad. Like October, November, we got a really big problem where suppliers said, "Yeah, we need 24 weeks to deliver this part or these parts," but the production needed like a couple of weeks. And then, of course, I gotta say, I had really good colleagues. They were always helping me,
Hmm.
and they were always very supportive. And they had a lot of experience, right? They were there for maybe 5, 10, 15 years. They knew suppliers much better than me. So I'm very helpful. That's very grateful that this environment actually was, let's say, supportive, right? So the people
Yeah.
actually were going to help you, but in the end, also it wasn't their job to fix my problems, right? So something was obviously wrong in this whole setup. So anyway, the last big problem that I had, I remember, was some kind of aluminum pipe that was very difficult to produce with like different suppliers involved. So there's one supplier and he had like a sub supplier, and he had a sub supplier, and there was a raw material supplier. So it was very difficult to solve the problem. So we were actually interacting with the sub suppliers of our supplier, which is not even our job, right? So basically, we
Oh
were
wow.
we
Yeah.
were we
Yeah.
were basically like talking to suppliers, our suppliers, which is actually a no-go. I mean, because if you're a customer, your supplier should solve the stuff, but in the end, suppliers said we can't do it. So we said, okay, what can we do to help? And then we tried to really like save the world and pull all levers that we had. Anyway, so I hadn't taken any vacation yet in that whole time when I was there since April, and I always had this feeling: if I leave now and leave everything behind and go on vacation, everything will fall apart. I had this feeling I am the single point of contact, and if I go, this whole factory will fall apart because I have this
Okay.
very high work ethos, right? So I want to deliver. I want to deliver good results and make things work because that's what I always did in my life. But for the first time in my life, it didn't work. And then eventually, okay, I said, okay, now I have to take time off. So I took 4 weeks off and I went to Thailand. It was November
No way.
2017. Hmm.
You
And
just
so I my
did they need to approve it, or were you just able to like, I'm just gonna go off for 4 weeks? Bye.
It was okay. It was approved. Also, like you
Okay.
have to take the vacation, right? Because the companies, the big corporate companies, they don't want you to take to transition the vacation over into the next year because then for them it's a liability and the accounting thing, and that actually is bad on the balance sheet. So they have to make sure that the employees take the majority of their vacation every year. So that's why it was okay
Mhm.
to go. But in the end, of
Okay.
course, I
Okay.
needed like
Fair.
somebody who fills in for me. So the other guy who told me if I wouldn't have come, he would have quit his job. Remember?
Hmm.
So this guy filled in for me, and I just left. And I took my phone off, my cell phone, my work cell phone, and turned it off. And I went to Thailand. I went to a co-working space in Koh Lanta. Amazing place, really, like one of the best co-working places I've seen so far in my life. And there I was actually coming in touch with all these digital nomads. I knew about the digital nomad stuff already from a podcast I listened to in April.
Yeah.
Sometimes I was always going to work. I was cycling in the morning, and that was unfortunately my highlight of the day. So I was cycling, and I was listening to this podcast from Markus Meurer, the next podcast. And I was okay, how do these guys pull it off, right? How can they build a company, live somewhere in Thailand or Brazil or Mexico, enjoy this amazing lifestyle somehow, and have it all? I didn't know. So I had, of course, the money. I had a great job, but I had zero satisfaction, and I was burned out.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
somehow building a business wasn't so easy at the time because somehow it didn't really fly because I had no energy left from that corporate job.
Yeah.
Anyway, so then I went to Thailand with the intention, okay, now I'm going to focus on my business for 4 weeks. I'm going to try to set up this Amazon FBA business. And then I was in Thailand, this co-working space, and everybody was amazing. Like the people, they were so happy and so friendly, and nothing that I was used to from my corporate job there in Switzerland. Because people were very negative, had very negative energy. It was a lot of finger pointing. They always look like what's the issue, right? Where's the problem? Who's the culprit? Who's to blame for something that didn't work
Yeah.
out?
Yeah.
And I remember in Switzerland, I came into the office in the morning at whatever 8:30. First meeting I had two times a week was like a meeting with other departments, including quality. So quality was like a quality meeting. And we come in there in that meeting, and then this quality manager guy has like a big list of on his laptop, opens up on like some kind of TV screen, and then says, okay, we have these and these issues, and the majority of the issues come from supply chain management because you don't know how to deal with your suppliers because they fucked up. And so basically, you start the day with this negative energy, right? So you start the day off with problems, with really negative stuff that doesn't motivate you at all, right? So and you get put down in the very first thing in the morning. So that's exactly what you should do in your morning routine or something. You should like watch TED Talks, do something positive, right? Read amazing things, talk to a friend, whatever. Go for a walk and have sunshine. But instead, I got this speech, whatever, by this guy, and he told me that everything's fucked up because you fucked up. And now imagine like the co-working space, it was a totally different life. So I came in there, everyone was happy and friendly. And at the same time, I also got in touch with Bitcoin much more because that was the time Bitcoin was really like going up heavily. So in November 2017, Bitcoin was like going up from over, I think, 8,000 to eventually 20,000 mid of December. And that's also being a scanner, of course. That's why I realized I'm actually more interested in Bitcoin and crypto than in doing Amazon FBA.
Interesting. But
Yeah,
it sounds a little bit like just the going to Kolanta these 4 weeks sounds like an escape for you. Just like
totally.
at first an escape, but then it became this secret thing that you actually wanted, but you didn't know you wanted. So as soon as you saw the lifestyle there, as soon as you saw how people could also be enjoying their life, you were like, "This is damn good. I want to do that too."
Exactly.
What is that? Yeah. Okay.
And then and I wasn't even finished with the whole story. But
Okay.
so technically, I was of course thinking what happened in the past, whatever, 6-7 months before, and how fucked up things were, and how bad I felt, how I was burnt out, how I couldn't manage this job. And then I was sitting at the ocean, and I was looking at the water, and I made a resolution. I said, okay, either I go home to Switzerland in December, and I quit this fucking job, or I'm going to mental institution. That was really my thought that I had, because somehow I knew it couldn't continue like this anymore. And then I came back. First thing I did is I bought some crypto because I didn't have my password for my accounts with me in Thailand. Second thing I did is I wrote my resignation letter. And I think on December 14th or 15th, I went to my boss's office and said, I have to talk to you. And then I dropped this thing in front of his face. And he said, yeah, I knew you were going to quit. But how did you know that? And he said, yeah, I have the feeling. I know when somebody is quitting. Yeah, and then I quit. And that was probably the best day of my life. Like really like leaving this absolute miserable situation felt so damn good. Yeah. And then I knew I was walking through the office and I felt like a king, you know? It's like I didn't even I didn't even get anything for that, but I felt internally like ending this really negative time frame, right? This phase for me
Yeah.
felt so fucking good. Yeah, felt amazing. And then later on, actually, my boss, who was a cool guy, he actually offered me to stay longer, which of course never better have more cash flow, but in a different job. He said, "Hey, actually, we were like on a business trip together to southern Switzerland to Ticino to visit supplier, and he actually said, "Hey, why don't you stay longer, like another half year or something, and you can create your own job." I said, "Wow, that sounds amazing. Yeah, sure." And then I did, and then I had a really amazing 2018 because I was working
Oh,
on.
really?
Yeah, I was still working at the company, and after Nomad Cruise 7, that was my first Nomad Cruise in 2018 in November. After the Nomad Cruise, I actually left that job for good, like before Christmas 2018. But so I still worked there for another 12 months since I resigned. But it was a much more comfortable time because for the first time they actually gave me a job that suited my skills. Right, so I was actually negotiating with suppliers about long-term contracts for the factory. Like I was revamping an entire factory, like building a self-driving vehicle to shift these two things around, right? And buy a new crane and stuff, and get all the specifications with the engineers, and that was actually a fun job. It was a really cool thing. That's what a supply chain manager is supposed to do. He's supposed to negotiate on a strategic level, and
Mm.
don't chase after like spare parts in the factory where some screws are missing. It's not my job. And those are kind of cool. So yeah, that was a very nice time, and at the same time, I could spend a lot of time investigating crypto. So if my boss now sees this, the truth is that probably in that job, I maybe worked only half of the time in that year 2018, right? So
Hmm.
technically, I got everything done. Everybody was really happy with me. They really liked my performance. I got an extremely good appraisal thing when I left, but still, I could do it like in less than half of the time.
Nice.
And yeah, that's my little story. It's like that took me half an hour, right, to explain how I got
Yeah, about yeah.
from corporate, from my from my childhood over college to having an
Hmm.
amazing corporate career to
Yeah.
leaving that thing, and then I went to a startup, and afterwards I became self-employed. Yeah.
Yeah, now I actually how I met you was through video production instead of crypto or the corporate world, anything like that. So, do you want to maybe we can sort of slowly go to an end because you said later another conversation to go, but I still want to
Mm,
go into your
have some
passion at the
time.
moment that
Yeah.
is video production, also so podcast management, anything video essentially. So quickly
Yes.
into wait, how did you start that suddenly? What I think 3 years ago or something. And
Yes, exactly.
yeah, how do you feel about that?
So technically, after that startup that failed, luckily, I was first unemployed, and then in that unemployed phase, I really like use the time to figure out what you want and what do I want to do with my life. And then I had a business partner, and she was also unemployed because she also came from corporate, was working in M&A before. And then we decided, okay, let's do something together online. And then we started launching this conference about investing called Invest
Mm.
Congress. Like for the German speaking market, and we invite all these speakers to talk about investing. And it was an amazing time. And yeah, and that during that time, I somebody had to do the video stuff, right? So I just started editing the videos myself. I learned everything from scratch. I learned how to use the Adobe Creative Cloud, like with all these apps like whatever Photoshop and Adobe Premiere Pro, Audition, and whatnot. So it's like a plethora of amazing tools in that cloud. Anyway, so video editing really stuck with me. So then I did all the videos for our conference, and at the same time, also I got my first gig as like recording crypto interviews with experts in the crypto space, and then publish them to the social media technically. And that was kind of
Oh,
cool.
so
So
it
that was
happened
my.
naturally. It came
It
naturally.
happened
You didn't have
naturally.
to.
Yes,
You
exactly.
didn't have to like, oh no, decide this is gonna happen. But it
Hmm.
actually was, hey, there's a passion for Invest Congress, and then it's like, oh, can you also do that for us? Can this happen? And can you do this? And it sounds like we were
Yes.
talking the other day, yesterday, in your podcast that it just happened to like more people just ask you about can you help them out, and your podcast guests become quite often your customers. So this is like still a thing that's
The
happening. You just
interviewees, yeah. become a customer.
Yeah.
So be a watch out, Julian.
Dang. I'm the next on your list.
Yes.
But essentially,
Yes.
like that, this is just the common thing that you just do things right now,
Yeah,
and
technically, I
people
wasn't
like
really
it.
looking like what brings me the most money, but like where's my passion? And then the
Yeah.
money followed. Actually, it's kind of cool because, of course, when I started my job in Switzerland, it's very high paid. Coming out of college, I was almost making a six-figure salary that straight out of college. Kind of cool, right? But in the end, it's not what gave me passion.
Hmm.
And now, finally, when I became an entrepreneur, which I am now, actually, things are going much easier because you go with your own interests, right? So you follow the things that spark your interest. So technically now I have four businesses running at the same time. So video being one of them. And it's just amazing when you're self-employed, when you're an entrepreneur, that you can decide how to use your time. Because now it's Tuesday morning for me. It's now almost 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So other people they would be in the office now. They would have a lunch break now with their colleagues, eating their whatever cantina food, and then go back to the desk and do some more stuff, some useless tasks. I don't know. I don't say that only useless tasks. There's a lot of cool stuff also in corporate jobs, right, or in any jobs. But I just say it because I was so frustrated in my job. But there can also be amazing jobs. I mean, for some people, it really works, right? They get a stable paycheck, stable
Mhm.
income. It's very predictable. For me, it wasn't what I wanted, right? Because I wanted to be a digital nomad, and being a digital nomad is very difficult as a supply chain manager, like my old field of expertise, because every company tells you have to be here to visit the suppliers and be on the ground to oversee the production.
Mm.
So that was already like another challenge, right? So I knew I want to be a nomad, but I also knew I cannot do it when I am somehow trying to get a job for my old profession. So I knew I had to develop new skills. And being self-employed, I guess you would agree, is the best school of life you can get because you have to learn so many new skills, right? So in a corporate job, you're just like very compartmentalized, right? So one is doing supply chain, the other one is doing whatever, like sales. Then there's marketing team, and you have HR and so on. When you're self-employed, when you're building companies, you are everything in one. Of course, now I come to a point where I really also am looking into hiring people, freelancers, and building systems for myself that I can outsource stuff. But in the very beginning of any kind of business you build, you are a one-man show and you have to build this yourself from scratch. And
Mm.
you learn more in being self-employed in a year than you could learn in 10 years in being a corporate job, I would say.
That's a great statement. How do you get that idea? Because I feel very similar, but sometimes it
Mhm.
feels odd because you're not so deeply into one direction and you're an expert in supply chain, but you know
Yeah.
sales, you know marketing, you know presentation skills. I know video editing, audio editing, like all of this stuff is just in your mind. You have those skills, but nothing where like, oh, I'm an expert in that. So maybe sometimes it's hard to market those things if you like intend to either go back or maybe get clients. But like, yeah, I'm a psychologist. I do video editing, I do audio editing, a bit of marketing, a bit here and there. And it's like,
Of
oh wait,
course,
that's
being a scanner obviously means you have many interests and many skills.
yeah.
Being a scanner also means that you have the power of getting knowledge very quickly in a certain area.
Hmm.
In the beginning I was talking called crypto, right? So how do you think I got all this knowledge? Not from studying in my degree now, but basically because I was so self-motivated and learned everything
Yeah.
about it. In that co-working space in Thailand, right? I asked the crypto guys, like one Dutch guy, I remember, he was like building some kind of arbitrage trading platform to do some kind of trading with Bitcoin. I asked all these guys how it works. Of course, so much stuff out there on YouTube, free education actually about the topics. And pretty much everything I know is because I am on like a self starter. In the thing when I really like want to and like dive into a topic, I have strong motivation and I can learn a lot. So yeah, so you become and maybe like a full expert. Let's say if you would study video editing and production in a degree at some kind of creative video school for 5 years, I think probably you would know some more stuff. But let's say in my time now as a self-taught video producer, I
Hmm.
know enough to satisfy probably 90% of clients' demand. So yes. And what do I want to say? And everything I cannot do, I can outsource. I mean, if
Hmm.
you're an entrepreneur, you always think like not what, but who, right? So if you don't have the skills, you can always outsource to somebody else who has the skills.
And that's such an interesting mindset, which I feel like when I talk to like my friends who are usually employed, and there's just those barriers in thinking, and probably because in a corporate job it's very compartmentalized. You don't have the resources, you do have to ask for permission to a lot of people.
Yeah,
And when you ask to digital nomads, to people that are self-employed, it's just like, how can I fix it? Who knows that? Who can I hire? Who can, how can I get around this? There must be a way. And
true.
that is such a different perspective. And I think that opens up also the world for so many possibilities, because you don't think that much in, oh, this is probably not possible because, but you think in, oh, let me find a way to either learn a skill, to find somebody who knows I can interview, or just I can hire someone.
Exactly. And that's the cool thing about our time, because everything now is available. Like I think 10 years ago, 20 years ago, it was much difficult to start this whole journey, because
Yeah.
you don't know where to start, how to, you have to go through this formal apprenticeship in order to do this kind of stuff. And nowadays, go to YouTube, type on whatever you want to learn, and bam, there it is. You can, of course, you can
Yeah.
take classes, you can get a whatever, personal coach, trainer, but in the end, majority of knowledge actually is out there already. So that's the thing. We don't have a lack of knowledge. We have like a lack of, I would say, commitment and pulling through, right? Because why do people buy an online course? They buy it because it's very condensed together, compared to if you go to YouTube and you look at all different things yourself. It's harder. People want the easy way most of the time. And then when they buy the course, including me, most of the course I've bought, I've never finished. So I just take the chunks and pieces that I need, but that's already enough to start. And I think that's like one of the core skills is to starting. And that was also the big issue for myself many years. I mean, let's say 2016, I read that book. I could have probably executed the whole journey much faster, but the things took as long as it took, right? And if you look at Steve Jobs, he always says, he doesn't always say anymore. He's not now long dead already. But in this famous speech at Stanford University, he said, like, connecting the dots, you can only see in hindsight like why something had to happen in a certain way, right? You cannot foresee like why things make sense, but in hindsight they make sense. And that's so funny, right? So you never know why a certain skill that you learned,
Yeah.
when it might be helpful for you one day. And I don't know what your question was, but I want to say that execution is key. So if you have a bad idea and you execute it well, it's much more worth a lot more than a great idea, amazing idea, executed badly, poorly, or not at all. Right? So execute, like lean startup, Eric Ries style. So like basically start, try it out, fail, get up again, then do it better and fail better and do it again. So you can always pivot, right? So if you see something doesn't work, nobody has to stay in one line of career all their life, and that was what was I was taught in the beginning,
Yeah.
right? So you study, you do one degree, and then you at one company all your life, and that's what my parents also said. They said, this company ABB is such an amazing company, and they do sustainability and blah blah blah, and they build robots and whatever. Yeah, it looks cool, but that marketing stuff has very little to do with like how I felt in my burnout stage in 2017 in a very fucked up production line there. So yeah, dear parents, of course you would like me to see in a corporate, you would like me to be in a corporate job and have a stable income and still pension fund and whatever. But I chose a different path. I said yes to myself. I said yes
Mm.
to what I want to do in life, and that is making this digital nomad lifestyle work, and at the same time build income streams and companies that are true to my heart and not true to somebody else's beliefs or envisions, whatever realities that are not mine, right? Because in the end, right now I live a much more authentic life than I did like back in my corporate times. Much more, to a, I don't know, degree of 100 million%.
All right. I think this is a great way to say cut and make that the final piece of this episode. Thank you so much, Kristiaan, that you joined, that you were here for me to interview you, to just tell me the whole story, essentially. And I feel like, especially after like the hour mark or something, we got so deep and you got so open to share. I love that. And I actually learned so many bits, or at least highlighted a lot of those things as well. I took some notes while you were talking as well,
You
to
can
write those
rewatch
things
the
down, because
recording.
I think it's important. Like sometimes we have those perspective shifts and insights, but we don't stick to them. We don't take them actually in. All of
Yeah,
those things, as the rich dad poor dad, for example, they have the power to transform your perspective if you don't take time to actually let it sink in. Just like, oh yeah, I've heard that before, and just move on.
yeah.
It's really hard to take those things in and change your life with the knowledge that you actually have. So yeah, thank you for sharing all of that.
You're welcome. It was an absolute pleasure to
Awesome.
be guest number 2 on your podcast.
Yes. All right. Hopefully, maybe talk to you soon. I think we have possibilities to be on either podcast, so we'll make it happen, I
Yeah,
guess.
absolutely. You can be a
Awesome.
regular on my show because even like yesterday, I was in the pool and then I realized there were certain things I didn't ask you.
Oh, I have a lot of things I didn't ask you either, but I was like, oh, time constraints. Even though we already talking for like almost 2 hours, and they were like, there's so many things in your story I want to dive deeper in other aspects. I'm like, oh, damn it, I need more time. But I think it's good to keep it still somewhat condensed.
I already talk
And
fast, right? So somebody talks slower,
yes,
you live even less content.
yeah,
And that's it.
true.
But if you want me to come back, I'm always just a phone call away.
Nice. All right, let's keep that
Nice.
in
That was
mind.
also, by the way, a vision of myself to be in a podcast, because at the time 2017, when I listened to all the podcast guys, I thought that I want to be one day in the podcasts. But
Nice.
for me, the way to be in podcasts was start my own podcast, because then actually people see you and then suddenly they won't talk to you. Super funny.
Yeah. All right. And then I think just one last thing is very important. Where can people find you, and maybe also who should reach out to you?
Yeah, very good question. So where can people find me? I would say easiest is Instagram or LinkedIn. You can find me under my name, Kristiaan Hilger. It's like with a K and 2 A's. And otherwise, my company. So Macadamia-Productions.com. You can send me an email, Kristiaan.Hilger@macadamiaproductions.com, or info at, and so on. Right? So check it out. And who should reach out to me? I would say 3 different groups of people can reach out to me. Or maybe many
Nice.
more. As a scanner, you all can come to me. It doesn't matter. But I would say mainly if you are interested in any kind of video or audio production, I would be happy to work with you, of course. Secondly, if you are interested in becoming an interviewee on my podcast, but you have to be German speaking though, my podcast is German speaking, and you have a cool topic to talk about, either you're a scanner or you have something else you want to talk about, come to my podcast. And third of all, of course, if you want to reach out and talk to me about the digital nomad lifestyle or Bitcoin or anything else you want to do in the podcast, come and talk to me. I would be more than happy to talk to you.
All right. And who would not love to talk to this awesome, fun guy? That's why we met in the first place. Thank you. Awesome. You listened to the full episode. Your investment to a more calm, confident, and doubtless self. Now you can make a commitment to yourself and help others discover this podcast. Simply by subscribing and following the podcast on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. I hope to see you here soon again for the new episode dropping every other Thursday. Talk soon.